Hello and welcome to Shiny Side Out with
Dave
and Mackie on WZZR.
Dave.
Broadcast. There you go. That's nice. Good work, man. It's an award for the timely introductions here, and he's a front runner. That's what happened. Broadcasting from Australia. That's a real place for Revolution Radio on revolution.radio, where it's more than just radio. So jump into the chat room if you can. And if you have some issues there, it shouldn't be overwhelming. Just try to follow some different links. But the chat room is where we are right now, and you can post your comments in there or participate in the debate. We check regularly. That's the thing. This is show number 442, 240 and 400. I mean, who'd have thunk it? 442 shows. Considering we only do one show a week, that's 442 weeks of shows. That's a lot of shows, and it's a long time now. 10 years, let's say. And we're going to talk about physical biological evidence for a whole bunch of stuff, and even evidence that has now been disappeared, I want to call it that, has been disappeared by various august bodies, the Smithsonian right up on top there. Now, this is on air, it's online and on your smart device. So grab an app to listen anywhere or listen at home on a great tabletop digital radio. I myself have never listened on an app, but I'm going to try that out, see how that works. If you missed Solaris' show, shame on you. I actually caught some of it, which was great, and she had an awesome guest today, Joe Roop, and they were talking about ceremonial magic. They're also talking about, rearranging things in your house, energy flow, which is really feng shui as well. So again, in my opinion, I'm going to say it here out loud, I think that magic and ley lines and acupuncture and feng shui and things of that nature are the remnants of a lost science, the science of a civilization, or even several civilizations that preceded this one, which is sort of in line with some of the things we've been discussing this year. Now, but if you did miss her show, right? If you did miss her show, then you can, for measly $5, unfortunately the free access is now over, we're in September. For measly $5 you can, a month, you can access all of the Freedom Slips archives. That's our shows, Solaris' shows, all the hosts' shows, and check them out there. And binge a bit. I mean, some of us still in lockdown, more or less, and everywhere in the world it's looking pretty grim. We're going to talk about that in a second as well. But certainly a really great resource as well for research, if you wanted to listen to the shows. Because, the topics are as varied as the hosts, and Nighthawk did a great job attracting some really talented people into his orbit, if you will. Before we start the show, though, we would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians in Australia of the land. And for me here in the Pilloway, it's the Daruk people, and for Dave
in the Rara, it's the Darkendrum.
And we'd like to pay our respects to elders past, present, and future. And for the most part, the elder people, the people that were here before the arrival of the white man. And it's the white man, not the white woman. There were no female explorers in the pantheon of explorers.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, it is, right? As colonization started, there wasn't really, and certainly none of the violent ones either. But yeah, so the English, the Spanish, the French, the Portuguese, the Dutch, the Belgians, the Germans, all of them went out and practiced. I guess the Germans were joining us come late at least, but they're all Italians too, by the way. Practiced what was called colonialism. Yes, we're founding colonies, initially conceived as a trade kind of venture, especially by the Portuguese and the Spanish. They weren't really interested in settling elsewhere, not really. They just wanted to extract the wealth, or trade, as it were. The Dutch as well. The Dutch were big into trade. But then came the English and the French and to some extent the Germans, and England wanted to create England wherever they went. Well, this is India. This is now England. We'll play cricket and we'll drink tea. That's what we do. And the Indians luckily already were drinking tea. That's a good thing. But they brought with them cricket. Interesting situation though, right? Colonialism. And then right now, this is a little bit of a segue into current affairs, we are seeing the backlash, the historical consequences of our colonial misadventures all over the world. With colonialism came the suppression and in some cases almost extermination of the native peoples. Certainly this oppression, let's call it, has remained on this day until this day. And if you look at statistics like prison populations, unemployment, crime rates, even death rates, due to crime, you will find that native populations or people of African descent living in the Americas or even in Europe or in Australia, elsewhere, are usually high up on the list of people that are faring much worse than their white counterparts. But Dave, how has your week been, my friend?
Yeah. It's the COVID week X, whatever. We're still in the mode in Australia of eradication of the virus, and it doesn't seem as though we've been having any great amount of success with that. We have states that are, locked out from others. So Northern Territory, Queensland, and WA have shut out the rest of the country, and it's pretty tough. The people in Victoria, because they spiked over, I think, 12,000 people over the last 2 months, which was, I think, almost equal to the entire country before then. They're in some pretty harsh lockdowns, and there's well, we'll get to this, but we'll get to the protests a bit later. But my week's been reasonably good. I went into work one day. I drove into work, and that was good. And outside of that, working from home, the whole experience is pretty good. I think our work-life balance has significantly smoothed out to a point where, when they do call for people to go back to work again, nationally, I think from a federal perspective, if we were able to eradicate the virus entirely and to say, look, we're right to go back, I have to wonder how many, what would the state of the country look like to start with, but then going forward, what does it really mean? Because all of the, I don't want to call it, I'm just whatever, right? Don't hate me. The parasitic industry that lives off the fact that people have to, I'm going to get hate mail, that people that have to commute to work to a central, little city or, city centre or a business district, the parasitic places that supply stuff for those people only in a transient form, and then they leave again, and those companies only do, lunch hours or, breakfast through lunch, and then they close for the afternoon. For instance, just saying, where there's $1 billion a week probably spent on that by the workforce, they're zombied at the moment, right? They've got nothing. So I think the way that we emerge from this is going to be, humanity version 2.
Humanity version 2.
You know what I mean? And I think it's going to be from every vector. We're going to see change, governmental change, whether we like it or not, possibly New World Order, but we'll get to that. We'll see that disposable income won't be spent where we used to spend it anymore. Because we've just announced this week we're in a recession. It didn't take, my daughter could work that out, right?
Yeah.
Who's 14.
In fact, we're cascading. We're cascading down a steep slope toward a depression, and in fact, a global depression, unless things are going to change soon.
It takes another quarter.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, right now, and these are not the real numbers. These are just numbers, the official numbers here, Dave. So we've got 27 million people officially that have tested. They say we get 27 million people were found to be infected. And just shy of 900,000 have passed away. Now, in my mind, if there's in fact this disease out there, then the number is probably 10 or 20 times higher, both for infected and deceased. One thing that, and I said this from the start, India really, really worries me. So India is tomorrow. By tomorrow, India will have overtaken Brazil as the second highest affected country. Because right now there's There's 10,000 people between India and Brazil, right? So Brazil is 10,000 people more infected. By tomorrow, India will be number 2, and I'm really terrified of what that's doing to the Indian subcontinent. Because I've been to India many times, and I know what the conditions are like, especially in the slums. I mean, I guess it's similar to it's similar to the favelas in Brazil. And these countries have a massive population. Right? India has got 1.3 billion people. I mean, Brazil has got over 200 million people as well. Don't forget, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Mexico has got 130 million people, right? I mean, you know what I didn't know? Bangladesh. Do you know how many people live in Bangladesh?
I know
165 million.
65 million. 320,000 have it.
165 million.
Yeah, wow.
Pakistan, 200 million people. 220 really.
That's just outstanding,
isn't
it? Yeah.
Oh, it's extraordinary. I mean, Indonesia, almost 300 million people live in Indonesia. Imagine that. That's just insane. There's a lot of people everywhere. Anyway, point here is that tomorrow we will see India in number 2 spot.
Geography 101.
Geography 101. That's right. Here we go. You learn something new every day. If you've learned something new, it's been a good day.
And their major exploits are, that's crazy. Those numbers are really big. So yes, India is going to probably exceed the US. It's going to take a while, but they're steep. Their graph is steeper than the US's, and they're climbing really fast. So that's my prediction. They'll be the Earth's number 1 for a while.
100%.
You know, countries that I didn't think were going to get there did. Like Russia's now got 1 million infected. I predicted by the end of the month we'll have, I think we're doing about 6,000 a day in global deaths, and that should get us to about 1 million by the end of the month.
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah, I've been plotting it
between 6 and 7, just about.
Yeah, pretty much, right? Yeah. So, but we're seeing overall, Maggie, this is really extraordinary, because remember how the virus itself, the reports of numbers dying as case fatality rates, just going on the official numbers, just that's what I'm reporting. The case fatality rate now is 4.7%, and you are absolutely right that we'd see that slow decline and curve, and it would flatten out. Well, it looks like it's flattening out, maybe about 4.5%, maybe 4.2 overall. But when you look at a normal flu season, that flu is way less than 4%. You know, we're talking 0.02, 0.03.
Oh, absolutely. And look, these are the official figures as well. So we need to understand that there have now been reports from official places as well. You know, I don't know if it was the CDC, but certainly some health officials that, you know, from different countries, they said, no, it's probably 10 times higher in reality, right?
Yeah.
Infected rates. But look, the death rate...
If the infection rate is higher and the death count isn't higher, then the case fatality rate is much less.
Yeah, correct.
Because the more people who are infected and less died, that's the ratio.
100%. So I think we'll find that the percentage is actually a lot higher because a lot of people were captured, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And I also believe that in relation to the much, much higher case rate, again, you only know who's got it once you've tested them.
That's right.
So when we talk about these 20, how much is it now? 27 million. Mm-hmm. So we're talking about 27 million people that have been tested. Those are the people that have been tested. Mm-hmm. Right, that we know about. And in fact, altogether, I mean, you look at how many tests have been conducted, you know, in excess of, holy moly, China, that can't be right.
Yeah, it is.
China conducted 160 million tests.
That's right.
That's insane.
And they did nearly 30 million in about a week in a single province. They tested every person.
That's impressive. Yeah. So we've tested a goodly percentage of the human race at this point. But again, only the ones that have been tested, you can actually then, you know, make a point of saying they're sick or not. Having said that, just because you test it doesn't mean you're in the clear. Right? You can catch it immediately after you test it.
That's right. That's right.
You know.
But you know, Mackie, do you know what this leads me to? The misrepresentation of the numbers. We sort of touched on it. So it's been revealed today that in Australia, of all places, that they've been manipulating the figures, and I have to say, surprise, surprise, Sunrise, because Sunrise was the morning show that revealed this information, and all the other mainstream media makers said nothing. They said nothing about it. But they said that the fatalities being reported as corona deaths, some only to have tested positive to the virus, but wasn't determined to be the cause of death, and juggling the figures to present when needed, to represent their narrative when they needed to say those numbers. So they held them back sometimes, bundled to them together and other times to announce them, whether they wanted to say that it was getting better or getting worse. So that's something else. So there was no coroner's report, Mickey, to determine whether someone died of coronavirus or what have you, right? So I don't want to seem like I'm taking an extremely right-wing view in any of this. Just a commentator. So that's all I'm trying to do.
What? Shut up. Can't say that.
I love
Can't
that.
say that.
I love that movie, man, with a kid sees Hitler. That's his friend. So look, it's been questioned across the globe, though, since the big pandemic began, and I stayed quite medical, Mickey, on the virus, as we well know, and all the history there in the shows, just reporting medically what has been talked about, how that has evolved, and now we've all understood, and we're all pretty much the same level. However, we recognise that China was misrepresenting the deaths, not testing people. Can't tell if we didn't test them. They had trucks going through the streets spraying. This week we found out that our government is testing sewerage for the virus because it's in the sewerage.
It's in food, it's in sewage, it's everywhere.
It's
so there's now
everywhere, right?
There's suspicion you can get it from food, which is extraordinary.
Yeah. So the fact that in Hubei, where in Wuhan specifically, they've got open pit drains through the city in some areas where the fumes from the sewage escaped. And that's why they were spraying in their streets, trying to, cleanse every surface there within, the street, all the front, everything, the road, you name it, right? So that's pretty hard. Knowing that they were doing it, we guesstimated they were doing that anyway, right? And then when that crematorium ordered 50,000, coffins, and that was a blip on the radar of the ordering platform and prior prior orders, that wasn't alone, and that alone, simply that single number, was greater than currently all the deaths that have been reported to date, and that was way back in July or June, I think, maybe even when we found that out. So thinking about that, and that our country now, so through the mainstream media, we've, the pandemic numbers have stayed pretty much steady with the reporting ethics, at least in Australia, we thought. But other countries had questioned that very idea and found these same 2 points much earlier than we had. We all looked at China and didn't really recognise it in ourselves. Australia was the last to take their head out of the sand and realise that their government was doing exactly the same thing. So I ask, because that's the actual wording from the Sunrise program, and I ask, can it be true? Are the governments manipulating the figures for their own narrative?
Well, yes. You have to also ask yourself the why, right? Why are we? I mean, it's the answer is yes. Of course, the answer is yes. The question has to be, why is it being done? Always have to ask yourself, why is something being done? And let's just look at that for a second here. So the answer is yes, 100% can be done. Of course, it can be done. It's been done in the past, it'll be done in the future. It's being done right now. But Dave, and this is my question to you: why do you think they would be doing it?
Yeah, I know. I hear that. So there has to be a motive. I know with the masks, they said masks are useless. Don't use them. It's only because they had a shortage. They didn't want us to go out and buy them all.
Yep.
And now they've gone, masks are okay. You probably want to wear them.
If you're Melbourne, you have to wear it.
You have to. They're mandating it. So that's something. That's a big change.
I tried mandating once, didn't really wear out for me.
You what? So I'm not going to go mandating. So I'm used to hearing it, right? All of this rhetoric about the other countries hearing it, due to my exposure to a wide number of sources of the media. But the masses, certainly Australia, may be shocked to hear it. That was the surprise that the media seemed surprised. And to me, it looked like what they were trying to do is separate themselves from the government going, hey, it wasn't us. It was them pointing at the government. They were the ones fudging the figures. We just reported it. Right? We could be the trustworthy news source if we say that. And all the other media outlets who are quiet, well, we'll just make you, reevaluate what you think they are doing, right? Because we all know what the media does hand in hand with the government, that they portray a narrative, and you can tell who's on whose payroll. So it's no wonder, Becky, that the protests that have broken all around the world, people are protesting for freedom or anti-masks. They're saying that masks are just a way of control. And look, I'm not going to question their motive of protesting. I believe that you're allowed to protest for anything. I don't care what it is.
Yeah,
if I want the grass on my lawn to be red, I'm going to protest because that's my democratic right to protest. I don't care what it is.
No, it is 100%. Absolutely, it's
that's what democracy does, right?
Did you see what they looked like though? Those police in Melbourne?
Yeah, they were fully militarized
stormtroopers. They had freaking stormtrooper helmets.
Stormtrooper helmets.
Like no, seriously, like literally, right?
Yeah.
I'm thinking, and like, yes, we are your father. What?
So, Becky, I have to say, putting those kind of troops on the street and making it illegal in Australia to protest, but we'll get to that in a second. It's no wonder that the government is trying to prevent protesting, in particular these protests against them and their narrative. If the media is propagating or promulgating their narrative, and there's only one outlet that was brave enough to go against it and reveal these massaged figures, wow. Withholding information, also saying that that people were the death count was really high anyway, but we'll just add some more people because they just died and they were like 96 years old and were already on palliative care anyway, but they tested positive for coronavirus and died, so that means it was a corona death. No, it should be deaths shouldn't just be deaths because you've been tested positive. I think
no. Look, that's correct. I mean, shot in the head.
Coronavirus. Yeah, that's the kind of stuff I've been seeing from overseas.
Yeah, I know, and it's of course complete nonsense. Having said that, the problem is that there are a lot of deaths that are not being accounted for, not being counted in this either, because well, first of all, nobody knew that these people were sick in the first place, and secondly, they didn't know that that they had to count all these people, right? So we are really in a news storm right now. We are in an effect or misrepresentation of fact wasteland, Dave, because we will only have a clear picture of this. It's like World War II. You're fighting. Yeah. World War II. You're fighting, and then people die here and there. You have no idea how many people die. Really, you don't, right? Once you have like a decade or 20 or 2 decades, maybe 20 years between yourself and the event or the period of events, you can make studies. You can look at trends. You can look at historicity. You can look at numbers and statistics, and you understand. Oh, okay, right. That many people died, and we will have those studies, and they'll come out. We'll be shocked when we find that out, right? When the Spanish flu was ravaging the world in 1918, 1919, people didn't know how many people died. That only came out later, much later.
Yeah, that's true. So look. The protests, Mickey, are going on across the globe, and I was quite surprised to see that this wasn't like learning about them all sort of going on at the same time. I think it was like 20 countries that I was in touch with, and they've all got their protests all happening around the same thing. That's why it was called Freedom Day, and it seemed like a global thing. Now, against masks and other controls like lockdowns, and they're all occurring around the globe. The weight of the backlash, though, against a new world order styled population control is currently overwhelming. That's where they're at. The motivation isn't save the economy. They're not wearing masks, walking down the street with banners saying save the economy. They're not. They're saying it's all against the government's use of controls to fight the virus, which impedes upon your personal liberty. And personal liberty now has boiled to the top as the most important thing that we have, rather than it being self-preservation. Because no one's quite fearing the virus enough for it to be self-preservation. When those two items on the list of your personal worries changed order, the narrative changed. The government's didn't. It got stronger. Pro-control and the people's fight. We don't want so much darn control. What on earth are you doing to us? We believe that you've gone too far. I'm not saying they have, but that's the people organising all these protests. But when
do you know why? Do you know why that is?
No.
I tell you why, and this is our own fault. When we say our own fault, it's our civilization's fault. So, in the olden days, people used to read books. To read a book takes time. People engaged in things that took time. You know, when you wanted to travel the world, you took a ship, and that took forever, months and months to get anywhere, right? So, but people were patient. People could focus on something. You know what? I think it was Einstein or Newton said this. One of them. All you need is to lock yourself away and focus on the one problem. So what Newton did, that he locked himself away for a year, worked on gravity. You know, and Einstein locked himself away for a year or two and worked on relativity, etc., etc. So if you want to do something well, you got to focus on it. What we are living now in is a civilization, and that's because it's all pervasive because of the devices and the apps that you have, right? And the social media. Our attention span is 30 seconds. Yeah, it's 30 seconds. Anything longer than 30 seconds is just a complete waste of time. I don't know if you've noticed this, but TV shows, movies with, not all movies, but with some exceptions. I mean, there's some obvious exceptions. Movies are getting shorter. News items are getting shorter. TV shows are getting shorter. Bits and pieces that are presented to you are shorter now. Advertising is a lot shorter as well. And everything is really geared toward a shorter attention span. We have been in this lockdown, Dave, for the better part of 8-9 months now, right? Globally, I'm talking globally, right? And it's getting long in the tooth. People no longer, in German it's called Sitzfleisch. And what Sitzfleisch, it's a beautiful word. It is describing the meat you sit on, right? So we don't have the meat to sit on anymore on our buttocks, right? Sitzfleisch. We just can't do it anymore. We need to be out there, socializing it up, whatever it is, and doing our own thing. And we've been told all of our lives, most of us, everybody that's alive today, pretty much, has been told in Western democracies that you are the most important person in the world. Your freedom is the most important thing in the world, right? Your individualism is the most important thing in the world.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah, in places like China, that's not really an issue. Because it isn't.
It's not even a thing.
It's not a thing. It's not a thing. Who's the most important thing? The state.
That's right.
The people are the most important thing. So we are now looking at people that really aren't used to being locked up and being told what to do. And they were given, there's a huge, 20-year-olds, 20 and 30-year-olds, right? They've been given trophies, even if they just participated, didn't win anything. You can't tell me what to do. And they've never seen a crisis. No one has ever seen a crisis. And again, Western democracies I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
And you can't do this. You can't tell me this.
On the hog, right?
Yeah.
And we haven't seen anything. Yeah.
But you have to ask yourself this as well, Dave, and this is where it gets interesting. Why are we where we are? I'm looking at the lockdowns. I'm looking at the virus itself and how long it has been taking to get anything out there. And then I'm thinking about the deaths of the microbiologists over the last 20 years, right? And quite a few of them would have been able to work quite constructively in this environment.
I keep leaning towards plandemic, Mackie. I can't help it.
No, look,
it's
again.
Sucking me in like a black hole.
but
I'm a
we've
moth
been
and it's
saying
the
this for 10
candle.
years. Ever since the hypothesis was aired here 10 years ago, we started talking every 50, 100 shows. We talk about the hypothesis. We expected an event right around now.
Yes, that's exactly right.
It's based on the population numbers, and lo and behold, there it is. I'm not saying we're prophets. What I'm saying is we are keen observers of the human condition and history, and we've looked at the past and we've tried to figure out what it all means. And to what the cycles of death, civilizations falling, others rising, why and how and what's going on here, right? We looked at quantum mechanics in that context as well. And 2020, 2021, where we were gonna hit 7.76 billion, and we still might, right? But this thing here that happened, the COVID-19 thing, I'm going to call it, right? And it doesn't even matter if there's a virus or not. It's completely irrelevant. Something is killing people, right? Even if nothing is killing people, right? And we're just reporting, deaths as a COVID-19 death, for example, right? That's irrelevant. See, it is no longer necessary to have this virus in reality.
It's the perpetual war, Mickey. What happened to terrorism? There's no more terrorism anymore.
No, well, there is, but it's not effective enough anymore.
It doesn't hit the top 5 articles
because
in
the
the news.
disease. So think about it this way: terrorism doesn't threaten you personally. The likelihood of you dying in a terrorist attack, even if you look the London thing and Paris thing that happened, or things elsewhere, highly unlikely that you would ever be personally affected. Highly unlikely. A disease, completely different story. A disease, there's a very high chance that you might get personally affected, right? And all of a sudden, you are now afraid of something. And I think the governments or the elite or whoever, they didn't play it up enough. All right, so whether this is a pandemic, a fake pandemic, or a real pandemic, or whatever it might be, it is not deadly enough. It is not horrific enough, right? Initially, it was pretty bad when you thought about. You remember the body bags and the mass graves and all that? That has sort of died down. We don't really see that anymore, right? If in my opinion, they have failed to make a case, because for the longest time, Dave and I were wondering, how are they going to introduce this control? Because the thing is this: you can't tell people what to do. You can't. It doesn't work. It works for a while, but you have to suppress them. It takes a lot of effort. Nobody wants to do that. It's just too hard to do.
Mickey, and it's got to be fear-based.
Bingo. You have to ask for the problem. And David Icke's been talking about this for years as well. It's an age-old thing, right? You create a problem, the people go, "Oh, please help me," and then, "Oh, yes, look here, this is what I'll do for you." And on comes the solution.
And you thank them for doing it.
Of course you do, right? But here, if it is a pandemic, let's call it that, right? It has badly failed to achieve that because people are now rising up against it. And the funny thing is this: it's not funny, but there are a number of things that are colliding here, and I don't know if they're with different agendas or if it's just happenstance or just trying to make things worse. There is a race war on the rise in the United States. There is. I maybe even class-based, but I think race-based it's a thing, because we're seeing more and more armed groups coming to these protests.
That's right.
And we're seeing more and more arms in the street. And this is not just from the right wing; it's from the left wing as well.
I've got to add something to this too. Keep going.
Go.
Black Lives Matter protesters, Mackie, were announced on the news as neither Trump supporters nor Biden supporters.
Yeah.
They were described as a third set of people. Third set. So, Mackie, thank you. Just think about it. If you wanted to disarm the president in the re-election hopes, if you were able to create a group that just vacuumed up everyone who might have likely have voted for Trump, to be honest with you, they announced it today that there was a conflict between the Trump supporters and the Black Lives Matter people. And I went, wow, that was perfect timing.
It makes, absolutely, but it makes sense, right? I mean, you have a narrative that's going sideways at an enormously fast rate. The American narrative, the American dream, what America stands for.
Happened?
Yeah.
Was it really this bad for so long, and this just boiled to the top, and now they're clamoring to try and fix it?
So
or recognize it only, not even fix it yet.
It used to be worse.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, right? So if you go back to, of course, I'm not talking about slavery in America. That's stupid. But if you go back to the 50s and 60s, when you've got the emancipation laws, Rosa Parks, and all these things, I mean, the world was much. I mean, African Americans were lynched on a regular basis, and white activists were also killed, especially in the southern states. It's just a thing that happened. We're not really there, but what we are now living in a generationally institutionalized form of oppression, racism. Mm-hmm. That it's like you're breathing, right? Nobody thinks about breathing; you just do it. Because, you know, if you had to think about breathing, half the people would probably forget to breathe and just die, right? So breathing is what we call an autonomous response. It's just something that your body does. It's an automatic action. This kind of racism is the same. You don't think about it. It's just part of your life. Oh, why do you hate black people? Oh, well, what do you mean? I don't understand the question, right? Because it was never something that was questioned. You just grew up that way. You grew up in the system. And these institutions are people, essentially, right? And all of the institutions are geared against certain groups, certain minorities, right? Mm-hmm. And that's really the kicker. But let's stay focus on the protests, though, Dave.
I wanted you to round out the whole thought process there, but I was going to say, look, the thing that we're seeing more now, and I'm taking it back to the media here, and that's the local news. We're not seeing in the mainstream media the worldwide protest movements, because that's against what they want. They're not allowed. I don't think the mainstream media is allowed to talk about all of those protests worldwide, you know, claiming that this is a bad thing currently, right? I see it, Meki, it parallels to me just like the child abuse through the Catholic Church, where we only thought it was within our country, but then when you look at the global news, you find it's in all the countries.
Yeah.
Right? At no point was it, this global thing is really bad, we should be really doing something on a global scale, but no, let's keep that. So, vision, Meki, of those protests, the two people that were charged in Australia for incitement, where where police handcuffed a pregnant woman and who had organised a protest in her local country town of Ballarat. Look it up where it is. Ballarat, it's called. For those who couldn't attend the big city one in Melbourne because of the curfews and all of the limited distance you're allowed to travel. So she thought, oh, that's nice. There's people here. I know I've got friends who want to protest, so we'll organise something. She was charged with incitement. Yeah, and both of these, and there was another guy also, another man who non-uniformed police came to his door, and broke it in.
Yeah, I saw that with the little battering ram.
Little battering ram, right? They broke in, and he was still trying to engage them on the balcony, saying, "Why do you want to come in? Tell me what's the charge, or what's the reason? Do you have a warrant?" He goes, "Yeah, we've got a warrant. Can you show it to me? Can you describe to me what it says?" And all of that, they just go, "Oh, he's not cooperating, we'll bust the door in." And then they broke the door in. And it's his own house, right? And he said, "Didn't you see the sign that says no trespass? Unless I'm inviting you, it's trespass." Anyway, so they refused to announce why, pretty much, or provide a warrant before trespass. This means that they had pre-approval from a judge, and that any delay in their minds could mean that he was deleting evidence off his devices, because him and the lady who was pregnant, who were handcuffed in their own home in front of their own children and taken away under this incitement charge, just for simply organising a normal protest, Mickey. I would have imagined that a uniformed police officer, so I was telling my father and some other people, that a uniformed police officer should have rung up and said, "Look, we've seen what you've posted, can you take it down?" Or attended in person, kindly knocked at the door and asked to come in without arrest. And maybe days before they could have done this. They could have asked the person to withdraw the protest or be charged for incitement. They could put the warning out there. They could say, otherwise, you know what, there's some forms to fill in to lodge for an official request to protest. And if it was declined, you could take it to the High Court and challenge the outcome. That's what happened in Sydney for the Black Lives Matter protest, which finally got through. It was allowed to protest, right? Now, both protests were organised in a way that would be defendable. They both listed all of these items. Be safe, wear masks, social distance, no weapons, right? Make your banners, come along. Friendly, that's not incitement, that's not an agitator, that's an organizer. So they could all get out of this. However, I think this is a sign of things to come, where the government uses extreme force to prevent opposition to its plans. I know I'm being silly here, but why aren't we stopping the police state? How can we stop it? And we're all turning into 1984 governance people, right? What's going on, Meki? What is this? What's it called?
Freedom, Dave. It's called freedom.
That's what I wanted. I tick that, Meki, on the last voting form. Freedom, wasn't it? One of the Freedom Party.
That's it. So just Meki here thinks it's called freedom. I don't know what Dave thinks it's called. And for our listeners here, this is the first joke we ever rehearsed.
10 years. 10 years.
10 years. First rehearsed joke on the show. Because we had a pre-show chat and we just spitballed and, flip-flopping. And this came up and it just worked really well. I think it's hilarious. But it's freedom anyway, Dave.
That's what it's called, freedom.
And blue is green and 2 + 2 is 88 or whatever they're going to tell me it is. I don't care. And if they don't like it, I can change.
That's right. But you know what's really weird, Mickey? It's not just coming from government. It's coming from big media, because I found some stories.
Who owns those media outlets? Come on,
right? That social media news rules, right? The new rules here, and it's Murdoch. I think I mentioned it before, but Murdoch is seeking now a tax for presenting news that his organization creates. And he's going to be requesting this from Google, Facebook, and Twitter. Yeah? So that's one angle that I found. And my question is, hasn't he made enough money from it? Surely he can share it. Right? Sharing this money, because the links take him to, there's a link on Facebook, and you click it and you get there and it's a news story and it says, you've got to subscribe to be able to read it. Google scrapes all these websites anyway for all the data it can get and then posts it up on its own. But what I think is bizarre, Facebook have now said that they're going to block people from posting news stories because of this tax, if it becomes a law. So I found a news story, I want to post it, and then it's going to say, you can't because it's from Murdoch Press, or they own the copyright to the copy.
So there's some outlets like the BBC, if you're going there, that does it. The Guardian Weekly or the Guardian, you can use any news that they don't charge you for it. There's a couple other outlets as well that they don't want to charge you still. So the Murdoch related, of course, they don't make cash. I mean, they're news. You're funny, right? Nobody gives a hoot about news anymore in that business, except for a few outlets. Everybody's in it for the cash, and if they can, so imagine how much money they could make if that tax was applied to Facebook.
Oh yes.
I mean, that would be phenomenal.
Yeah.
Right? Oh yeah, I'm going to sell all my TV rights. I don't care.
It's global too, because some of these are from UK outlets, Mickey, not just Australia.
But that's it. But the thing is, how do you enforce a global tax?
Oh, it's so easy.
Can you?
Yes. See, you make it so Facebook has to do it. And in the fear of they find a news story that anyone has shared anywhere on Facebook and you didn't pay the tax, then we'll come down with maybe 1,000, 10,000 times the cost of the tax.
You know what's going to happen here?
What's going to happen?
This is going to happen. The same thing that always happens. What we'll see is a rise in citizen reporters, in citizen journalists, in citizen. I think there will be sites, news sites. I mean, there will be unfiltered and unedited, right, of content.
Yeah.
That will be posted by people free of charge. Maybe like your WordPress or my WordPress account, people will just post from there, and that'll be picked up by Google and Facebook, etc., etc. And the other news outlets, the big media giants. Well,
isn't that scary to the mainstream media, Mickey?
Yeah, it should be,
because that's the
truth.
But
they don't see it. But see, blockbuster videos back in the 80s was a great business, right? In the 90s, early 90s, it was licensed to print money, right? Where are they now? Show me one. They're gone because they didn't go with the times, right? I mean, Netflix today is a good idea. Tomorrow, Netflix is going to be out. You know why? Because I believe eventually all that content is going to be available free.
Yeah.
There'll be little ads thing here and there, but you won't be paying for content. No one will pay for content. This is my prediction. I'm going to put it out there. Content will be free. You will be paying for it through little ads here and there, and little pop-ups here and there, right? It'll be annoying, but very few people will care. It's like having It's like having ads in newspapers.
Yeah, that's right. You don't care. Newspapers, you read past them. Yeah.
Yeah. So newspapers used to be quite expensive.
YouTube has 2 unstoppable ads now. And on some content, right? It just rolls. You can't do anything about it.
Oh.
And why can't the news industry or the streaming services? I believe, Mackie, every single thing that's ever been put to air ever should be available on a server, and I don't care if advertising has to pay to get my access to it. That's it.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
And then you have to ask yourself, how much? And this is where IP comes in, intellectual property. This is going to get interesting, right? Because a lot of countries in the world don't actually respect or have a concept.
I know
of IP.
India and China don't.
No, if it's out in the world, well, too bad for you. It's out there, right? So it's really interesting how much of that will, because the thing about between India and China, we've got 40% of the population of the globe. 40%. Right?
Imagine the revenue if you could get access to it.
Oh, look, that's the thing. And I think what it is, you as people want content, original content, they'll come to you. If they like what you do, they come to you, right? And if they want to come to you, then they should pay for it, right? And that's fair. But the easiest way to, or the best way to lock that down is to somehow splice unblockable ads. Right, so you need to put splice in things. If you want to watch my content, that's cool. It's the first 5 minutes, right, or whatever it is, or the first 2 pages. And if you want to keep going, this ad will pop up. It will pop up. There's nothing you can do, right? As soon as the technology has been perfected, that's it. Any other form of paid media is going to go the way of the dodo, right? Because it just won't work. I mean, you can pirate anything, you can download it, you can copy it, you can this, whatever. But if you have this unstoppable ad embedded somehow in your media stream or your content,
it's actually it's not part of the app. It's streamed.
No,
and so
no.
Then you can't
content.
turn it off. Yeah, exactly.
That's it.
There we go. We should patent that idea. You heard it here first. Mekki, I know we've only got like 6 minutes, but I wanted to talk about the terrible plight of the poor old kangaroos, poor old koalas, Mekki.
You don't even know their names anymore. Look at that.
Yeah.
They extinct already.
You know that guy? Do you know the name of that guy that used to be on television?
Once off the air, who remembers?
That's right. How it's a showbiz is a fickle business, kid. So the koala population plummets on the north coast after the 2019-2020 fires, the bushfires. And if I had to ask you, Mekki, what % do you think they've plummeted? What do you think you'd say?
Well, I'm going to take a guess. I'm going to say around 71%.
Exactly 71%.
Oh, what a good guess!
Credit.
What a good guess I am.
So it's terrible, actually, to be honest. So a study has emerged showing that 71% of koalas have died in the past year, mostly due to the fires or related habitat loss. Because remember, they were devastated, absolutely devastated. Not one thing grew back, except of course the native trees. They tend to love it. Right? They're bred for bushfires. And look, the state I live in New South Wales, is where this has happened, where Mekki and I live. And our state leader is selling land that has koala population still alive on it and selling it for development. Is it crazy? And at the moment, there's a hashtag getting around that if you come across a story where you find our current New South Wales state premier, I won't say the name, or anything to do with koalas at the same time where habitat loss is concerned, there's a hashtag called Koala Killer. And it's been trending so high because of a YouTube channel called Friendly Geordies, and I do say that you suggest you go over there and have a listen to some of his work. He's quite smart. he has a laugh, and if you're not getting sued by Clive Palmer, I don't know, you're doing something wrong, clearly. And he is getting sued by Clive Palmer. But I think I mentioned this already in a past show, but he called him some names, and then he used his YouTube channel to present his argument for every one of the claims. And he did that publicly, using the public as references. And it was very funny, Meki, I have to say, if you want to find something. I don't think Meki and I are that controversial, but do consider this. Meki, this current year, there's been forecast, this next season that we're going to go through, not spring but summer, the next fire season, has, by our current government, only been blamed on La Nina and not climate change in advance of it occurring. Isn't it crazy?
Well, is it crazy?
Well, 3 billion creatures died in the last fire season, and let's see if we can top that. But this time we won't be calling it climate change. It'll be La Nina. The old, Pacific Ocean warming, surface warming.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, it's all good. We don't have to worry about it. Oh, stop worrying then. Oh, crisis averted.
Yes. Oh, we named it already.
Yes, done.
There you go. I knew there was a way out. All you had to do was name it. And there it is.
That's the fact.
No more worries.
No, I'm good. I'm worry free now. I thank you for giving it a name, Dave. Much appreciated.
But look, the whole point, I think, of this news is that the government narrative across the planet has changed, and I'm regretfully conceding to a new world out of the virus as an even more controlled, more steps towards everything they're doing is another step away from freedom, but more towards a centralized new world order and equalization of laws across the planet. I can't help it. It's all I'm seeing. It, to me, looks like that. I hope that we can emerge out of all of this, and we're going to be just fine. How's that?
Yeah, that's not going to happen. What? No, it's not. We are now seeing an accelerated move toward change. It started a long time ago, but it really was initiated in 2001, September 11. Soon we're coming up to the 19th anniversary, believe it or not, of that event. 19 years, Dave, since that happened. And look at the world as it is today. I mean, look at it. I mean, it's just insane, the world we're living in, to be honest with you. No, all right. But no, we are now. We're living with the consequences, and we're living with the agenda is unfolding. I think in exactly the way that they wanted to unfold, and there's very little, it seems, that we can do about it. But that's not true. We can do a whole lot about it, but people are unaware. Even though they're not aware, they are doing it, right? These protests that you mentioned earlier, the feeling that you need freedom, the feeling that you need to do the right thing for yourself and as an individual, that's coming more and more to the fore. And it's actually irrelevant now if there's a virus or not.
Yes, that's
it's actually
right.
completely irrelevant.
We're already changed.
It doesn't matter.
We're not coming back.
It no longer matters. And that's really scary if you think about it.
The environmental changes are significantly better, and the infrastructure that we were all, every single place on the planet where you've got a traffic jam, those are a thing of the past, because our infrastructure will last another 30 years now. If we were to maintain the style of operation that we have now, industries will change, and there'll be changes of those parasitic industries. They'll have to find something else or do things or whatever they have to do. Baby, there's the music.
Don't go away anywhere.
And take the time to donate between this when we come back from the break. It's only a short break, and we'll see you in a sec. If you're listening to the live stream, you have to change to the new stream. Okay, after the break.